I still remember the dust clinging to my boots that night, the smell of drywall and sweat following me as I stepped through the front door of our suburban Texas home. Normally, I expected silence or maybe the faint hum of the TV. Instead, I was hit with something strange, something out of place, the sweet, unfamiliar scent of lavender candles. That alone was unusual. My wife, Laura, hated candles. She always complained they gave her headaches. So why were they burning now, flickering in the hallway like stage lights waiting for the curtain to rise? Laura appeared from the living room, her cheeks flushed, her hair falling loosely around her shoulders as if she had been preparing for some kind of performance. In her trembling hands, she held a small white stick. Her voice shook when she whispered my name. "David," she said, almost breathless. "You're not going to believe this." I looked down. 2 faint pink lines stared back at me, undeniable and permanent. Pregnant. The word slammed into me, tightening my chest. But it wasn't joy that filled me. It was dread. Just a month earlier, I had sat in a sterile doctor's office while he explained what I already feared. Scar tissue, damaged counts, diminished odds. Less than a 5% chance of fathering a child. His words were clinical, but they cut deeper than any knife. I walked out of that office feeling less of a man, less of a husband, less whole. So when Laura stood in front of me now, glowing with excitement, claiming we were about to start a family, my mind didn't rush to hope. It rushed to suspicion. If she was pregnant, it wasn't my miracle. It was someone else's. The more I looked around, the more the strangeness of that night pressed down on me. Lavender candles lined the hallway table, their shadows dancing across framed family photos. Photos that suddenly felt like props in a play. Laura had never cared for candles, never wanted them in the house. Yet here they were, burning bright, filling the air with a scent that didn't belong to us. Her smile was too wide, almost rehearsed, her words spilling out too quickly, her nervous energy practically vibrating through the room. I wrapped my arms around her because that's what any husband would do. To an outsider, it probably looked tender, like a beautiful moment between a husband and wife about to start a new chapter of their lives. But inside, my embrace was hollow. My chest didn't swell with pride, my stomach didn't twist with joy. Instead, something cold and sharp began to turn in the back of my mind. I nodded. I forced a smile. "That's amazing," I muttered, just to buy myself time. She couldn't see that my eyes were empty, that behind them I was dissecting every detail, her flushed cheeks, her restless movements, the way her gaze flickered toward me and then away. I wanted to believe her joy. I wanted to fall into the moment, to feel the hope she wanted me to feel. But the math didn't add up. My body refused to believe what she was saying. My biology had already delivered the verdict, and the timing didn't fit. As Laura pressed the test into my hand and whispered about how our lives were going to change, I felt a distance growing between us, a chasm that no words could bridge. My heart was already withdrawing, building walls. The truth lingered just beneath the surface, heavy and undeniable. Deep down, I already knew something about Laura, and about this night, wasn't right. That night, after Laura fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan spinning above us. Her breathing was steady, almost peaceful, but my mind churned like a machine that refused to shut down. Less than 5%. The doctor's words echoed over and over, sharp and inescapable. I glanced at her curled form beside me, the faint glow of her phone lighting up the nightstand. She had started sleeping with it face down lately, as if the screen itself were a secret she had to guard. I told myself I was imagining things, twisting innocent details into poison. But suspicion is like a shadow, you can try to ignore it, but it always follows. And now it followed me into every corner of our bedroom. 2 weeks earlier, Laura had gone on a business trip to Chicago. Just a few days, she had said, with her team. At first, I hadn't thought much of it. Travel was part of her job. But when she came back, something was different. She was lighter, glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. She hummed around the kitchen while cooking, laughed at her phone late at night, slipped into bed with a quiet, secretive smile. She wasn't exhausted from work, she was energized. I remembered her suitcase on the floor, the faint trace of cologne that wasn't mine clinging to her clothes. I remembered how she kept mentioning a name, Ethan Cole. She said it so casually, almost too casually. "You'd like him, David. He just gets me." At the time, I brushed it off. Another senior executive, another name in a sea of colleagues. But the more she spoke his name, the more it carved itself into my memory. Ethan this, Ethan that. He's brilliant. He understands me. She spoke about him with a spark in her eyes, a spark I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Now, staring at the pregnancy test still hidden in my drawer, that spark felt like a clue I had ignored. The next morning, Laura moved through the house with the same nervous energy. She brewed coffee, straightened her blazer, kissed me lightly on the cheek before rushing out the door. I stood there in the kitchen, the taste of bitterness on my tongue. I wanted to stop her, to demand answers right then and there. But demanding would only tip my hand. And if there was one thing I understood from years of working construction, it was this: you don't swing the hammer until you know exactly where the nails are. So I played the role. I smiled when she texted me later, sending me links to baby furniture and nursery paint swatches. I wrote back with emojis and short replies, careful not to betray the storm brewing inside me. On the outside, I was the same steady husband. Inside, I was unraveling thread by thread. It wasn't just the pregnancy. It was the little things. The way she angled her phone screen away when a message buzzed. The perfume I didn't recognize, bold and expensive, clinging to her blouse one evening. The muffled phone calls at midnight, her voice low behind the bathroom door. When I asked, she said it was project deadlines. But deadlines don't make you giggle in the dark. Deadlines don't leave you glowing when you slip back into bed. Each detail felt small on its own. But stacked together, they built a tower of lies. I stopped asking questions. Instead, I started watching. My silence became my weapon. She thought I was blind, that I was still the trusting David who never questioned her late nights. But I was learning. Every movement, every phone call, every laugh behind closed doors became a piece of the puzzle. And the more I watched, the clearer it became: my marriage wasn't a home anymore. It was a stage. Suspicion wasn't enough. Feelings could be denied, doubts could be twisted, but proof, cold, undeniable proof, was a different story. If I wanted to survive this, I couldn't rely on gut feelings. I needed evidence. So I made a decision. I would stop guessing and start collecting. The next morning, I told Laura I wasn't feeling well. She kissed my forehead with concern, thanked me for taking it easy, and walked out the door like nothing was wrong. The second the lock clicked behind her, I felt something harden inside me. This wasn't about love anymore. This was about survival. Instead of crawling back into bed, I drove across town to a small cafe no one I knew ever visited. I slipped into a corner booth, ordered a black coffee I had no intention of drinking, and opened my laptop. Around me, people scrolled their phones, tapped keyboards, lived their ordinary lives. But I wasn't living ordinary anymore. I was hunting for the truth. Logging into our joint phone account, my fingers trembled at first. But when the records loaded, I steadied. Line after line of numbers stretched back weeks. At first, it all looked normal: calls to her mother, to a couple of colleagues I recognized. But then I saw it, one number repeated again and again, always at odd hours. Midnight. 1:14 a.m. 2:06 a.m. Always short, never more than a few minutes. My stomach twisted. Normal colleagues don't call each other at midnight. Normal wives don't lock the bathroom door to take those calls. I scrolled further, my pulse sharp and deliberate. The same number appeared almost daily, sometimes twice a day, always at the times Laura said she was working late. Dozens of calls in a single month. During her Chicago trip, it spiked, hourly conversations, bursts of contact like a lifeline she couldn't let go of. I grabbed a napkin and started scribbling dates and times with a pen the waitress left behind. Each line was a crack in the foundation of my marriage, each scribble a tally of betrayal. I could almost hear her voice in the background, laughing in the dark, whispering behind locked doors, and now I had the number to prove it. I leaned back, the napkin covered in ink, and copied the number into a reverse search. For a second, the screen spun, loading, teasing me with the unknown. Then it hit me, sharp and undeniable. Ethan Cole. The same man whose name she dropped so casually into our conversations, the man she had praised like some genius, the man she once said, "just gets me." Now his number glared back at me in black and white. The same number tied to her late-night whispers, her secret smiles, her lies. I froze in that cafe, the coffee beside me long gone cold. My suspicions weren't just suspicions anymore. They had a name, a face, a man I had shaken hands with at company dinners. He smiled at me then, all while slipping into my marriage behind my back. The pieces clicked into place with sickening precision. Laura wasn't carrying my child. She was carrying his. The moment Ethan's name appeared on the screen, a wave of pain shot through me so sharp it nearly doubled me over. My chest tightened, my hands shook, my jaw clenched until it hurt. For a moment, I thought I might shatter right there in that cafe, surrounded by strangers who had no idea my world had just been gutted. But I didn't break. I couldn't. I forced my breathing steady, clamped my jaw shut, and let the fire burn inward instead of out. Rage is easy. Rage explodes. But control is sharper. Control cuts deeper. I folded the napkin, slid it into my pocket, and closed the laptop. To anyone watching, I was just another man checking emails, sipping coffee, living an ordinary day. But inside, I was something else. A storm contained. A fuse burning slow. Ethan Cole wasn't just a name on a screen anymore. He was a target. And I wasn't going to rush. I was going to be precise. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. The next morning, Laura rushed off to work, her laptop left half-closed on the kitchen table. For a moment, I just stared at it, the silver shell glowing faintly in the morning light. That laptop wasn't just a tool, it was a vault. A vault that held every answer I needed. My hands moved on their own. I slid into the chair, opened the lid, and waited for the password prompt. Laura had always been careless with security. Same combinations, recycled patterns. I typed in her college sorority initials followed by her graduation year. The screen blinked, and just like that, her world opened to me. Emails filled the inbox in neat rows, subject lines about projects, meetings, and deadlines. On the surface, it all looked routine, professional. But I knew better. Buried somewhere in here was the truth. My pulse steadied as I scrolled line by line. At first, it lulled me into doubt. Client updates. Budget approvals. Project schedules. Ordinary. Harmless. For a moment, I almost convinced myself I was wrong, that maybe I had twisted the shadows into monsters. But hesitation is dangerous, and I'd seen too many jobs where wiring looked perfect on the outside only to find rot behind the walls. So I kept digging. The tone of the emails shifted the deeper I went. Subtle at first. A joke slipped into a subject line. A smiley face tucked at the end of a message. Gratitude that sounded more intimate than professional. You deserve to be seen. Can't stop thinking about our conversations. Those words didn't belong in an office inbox. And then came her replies. Short, playful lines that carried the intimacy of lovers trying to disguise themselves. I could almost hear her laughing as she typed them, believing they were hidden in plain sight. Then I saw it. An email buried halfway down the thread, words glowing against the screen like an open wound. Chicago feels like destiny. Being with you feels like breathing for the first time. Chicago. The trip that changed her, the trip she returned from brighter, lighter, humming like she carried a secret joy. I thought she had found relief from stress. Instead, she had found him. Ethan. And now, she was calling it destiny. I clenched the sides of the chair, my jaw tight enough to ache. This wasn't just lust. This wasn't a fling. She was rewriting her entire story, painting our marriage as a mistake and Ethan as her salvation. I forced myself to keep scrolling. Hotel bookings tucked neatly between spreadsheets. Dinner reservations stamped with Chicago dates. Receipts for 2 guests, 1 king bed. No ambiguity. No excuses. Just proof, bold and undeniable. My stomach twisted as I clicked through the attachments, each one cutting deeper than the last. But nothing compared to the line I found next. This baby is ours, Ethan. It has to be. David and I haven't been close in weeks. The words burned into me, searing away whatever scraps of hope I had left. I read them once. Then again. Each time, the letters dug deeper. The baby she celebrated as ours was never mine. It was his. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, my chest heaving like the air itself had turned to stone. For a moment, I wanted to collapse, to let grief crush me. But I didn't. Instead, the shock hardened into something sharper. I copied the emails, saved the files, dragged every receipt and message onto a flash drive. Every click of the mouse felt like loading a bullet into a chamber. Cold. Methodical. Precise. Laura thought she was writing a love story. Ethan thought he was untouchable. But what they had written was a confession. And I was going to use it to end them both. A few days later, I sat across from a woman named Kate Monroe in her downtown office, the city skyline glinting behind her like cold steel. She wasn't the kind of lawyer who smiled to put you at ease. Sharp suit, sharper eyes. The kind of person who'd tear a liar apart piece by piece. Exactly what I needed. I slid a flash drive across her polished desk. Everything's on there, I said. Emails, receipts, phone logs. Even her message where she admitted the baby isn't mine. She plugged it in without a word. For several minutes, the only sound in the room was the hum of her computer. I sat there, my heart pounding like a jackhammer under my ribs, but my face stayed calm. I'd learned to hide storms. Finally, Kate leaned back, folded her hands, and studied me. You don't just have grounds for divorce, she said, her voice precise, deliberate. You have grounds for war. The word hung in the air like a blade. War. Not an argument, not a confrontation, a full dismantling. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something close to clarity. Good, I told her, my voice flat, steady. Because that's exactly what I'm preparing for. For the next hour, I walked her through every piece of proof I'd gathered. Phone records showing midnight calls. Hotel reservations stamped with 2 guests, 1 bed. Emails where Laura confessed, "This baby is ours, Ethan." Each file slid across her desk like bricks in the wall I was building against them. Kate listened with the focus of a surgeon. She asked sharp questions, dates, timelines, context. I had answers for every one of them. My notes were meticulous, my timeline airtight. With each answer, I saw her eyes sharpen, as though the picture was coming into focus piece by piece. Finally, she closed the folder and rested her fingers on its edge. David, this isn't suspicion. This is a case. They won't be able to talk their way out of this. Her words didn't rattle me. They anchored me. I wasn't there for sympathy. I wasn't there to be told I was right. I was there for confirmation that what I was about to do could be done, and done clean. Kate sketched out a strategy on a yellow legal pad, her pen moving fast and confident. This isn't about reacting, she said. It's about control. We'll hit them in 3 phases. She tapped the page with her pen. Phase 1, legal. Divorce proceedings filed with full evidence. No wiggle room, no settlements on their terms. We dictate the narrative. Phase 2, family. Ethan's wife deserves to know. Once she does, their shiny little affair collapses under its own weight. Phase 3, professional. Ethan's relationship with a subordinate violates company policy. Once HR sees this file, his career is finished. I studied the 3 lines she drew across the page. Simple but devastating. Legal. Family. Career. 3 strikes. My jaw tightened. I wasn't smiling, I wasn't celebrating, but something in me settled. This wasn't about rage anymore. Rage burns too fast. This was about precision. Laura thought she was in control. Ethan thought he was untouchable. But neither of them had any idea. My silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. And when the time came, I wasn't going to confront them. I was going to destroy them. The plan Kate laid out was airtight, but airtight plans need airtight evidence. And though I had plenty, I wanted more, something that would erase even the faintest trace of doubt. That's how I found myself in a quiet diner off the interstate a few days later, sitting across from a man whose name I'd only heard in whispers on job sites. A private investigator. Mid-50s, weathered face, eyes like glass that missed nothing. He didn't waste time with small talk. Names, dates, places, he said flatly. I slid a folder across the sticky table, copies of emails and receipts tucked inside. Her name is Laura Carter. His is Ethan Cole. Chicago trip, late-night calls, hotel bookings. You'll find what I already know. He flipped through the papers, didn't flinch at the words, didn't ask if I was sure. He just nodded once, as though betrayal was as routine to him as the chipped coffee mug in his hand. Consider it done, he said. Walking out of that diner, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was an operation. Laura and Ethan had built their world on secrecy. I was going to burn it down with facts. But there was one truth only science could deliver. The baby. The child Laura swore was mine. I found a private lab, the kind that didn't ask questions if you paid in cash. On the phone, the technician's voice was calm, clinical, as if setting up a paternity test was just another Tuesday. For him, maybe it was. For me, it was the final nail waiting to be hammered in. I arranged everything. Once the baby was born, a test would confirm what my gut already screamed. Less than 5% chance for me. 95% certainty for Ethan. The DNA would erase any illusions Laura might try to spin. When I hung up, I caught my reflection in the truck's windshield. Same face, same lines, but the man staring back at me wasn't the same. He wasn't clinging to hope anymore. He was preparing for confirmation. Back in my garage, at the workbench where I usually sketched wiring diagrams, I opened a fresh notebook. This time, it wasn't construction plans I was mapping. It was betrayal. I wrote down dates of Laura's trips, times of her midnight calls, receipts matched with her excuses, emails that aligned perfectly with her sudden bursts of laughter behind closed doors. Arrows connected events, highlighter circled overlaps. When I stepped back, the pages looked like a crime scene investigation. Because that's exactly what it was. At home, I became an actor in my own life. I laughed at Laura's jokes, nodded when she floated baby names, kissed her cheek when she leaned close. To her, I was still dependable, steady David. Blind, trusting. But inside, I was stone. Every word she spoke, every smile she offered, every touch she gave me, I filtered all of it through the truth of what I'd uncovered. She thought she was safe. That her lies were airtight. That I would keep protecting her, providing for her, playing the fool. But she had no idea. While she built castles in the air, I was laying foundations in stone. And soon enough, those castles would collapse. The morning it all began looked deceptively ordinary. Sunlight spilled across the neighborhood, kids biked past on their way to school, and Laura moved through the kitchen with her usual rhythm, coffee brewing, blazer straightened, purse slung over her shoulder. She kissed me lightly on the cheek before heading out the door, her smile as bright as ever. She believed she still controlled the story. But in my pocket was the packet Kate Monroe had prepared, divorce papers, evidence files, everything timed to the minute. At exactly 11 a.m., while Laura sat in her staff meeting surrounded by colleagues, a process server would walk into that glass conference room and drop her double life into her lap. To her, it was just another Wednesday. To me, it was the morning her carefully constructed world began to collapse. I parked 3 blocks from her office tower, engine off, watching the glass reflect the late morning sun. I imagined her inside, confident, polished, speaking numbers she hadn't earned. She thrived in those rooms, feeding off the admiration of her coworkers. She thought they saw her as the perfect professional, the glowing wife-to-be. She had no idea the walls were already closing in. At 11 sharp, the door to her meeting room opened. I wasn't there, but I had played the scene in my mind 100 times. A man in a dark suit stepped inside, carrying nothing but a plain envelope. His shoes clicked against the polished floor as conversations fell silent. Every eye in the room followed him as he crossed to Laura's chair. "Laura Carter?" he asked. Confused, she looked up. "Yes?" The envelope dropped in front of her with surgical precision. "You've been served." The room froze. Papers rustled to a stop. Voices cut off mid-sentence. Even the hum of the projector seemed louder in the silence that followed. My wife, who had built her identity on image and control, sat with her hand hovering over the envelope, her smile collapsing as whispers rippled around her. I didn't need to be there. Minutes later, my phone buzzed with a confirmation from the server: delivery complete. Witnesses present. Subject shocked. I let the words sink in, a quiet satisfaction spreading through me. Not joy, not triumph, something colder. Phase 1 was complete. Laura wasn't hiding anymore. She had been unmasked in the place she valued most, in front of the colleagues whose respect she lived for. But I hadn't stopped with her. At the exact same time, across town, a courier knocked on another door. Ethan's wife, Sarah, opened it. She accepted a thick envelope, probably expecting bills or school papers. Instead, she found the truth: emails, hotel confirmations, screenshots of messages where her husband whispered about destiny and fatherhood with my wife. I wasn't there either, but I could picture it vividly, her hands trembling, her face draining of color as line after line of betrayal spilled across her kitchen table. I could hear the grief breaking into rage, the way neighbors might hear shouts through the walls. By the time Laura sat stunned in her office, Ethan's home life was already detonating. 2 marriages, 2 families, collapsing in unison. But that was only the second phase. The third was already moving into place. At Pinnacle Marketing's HR department, another envelope had been signed for that morning. Inside, the full report. Evidence of a senior executive conducting an affair with a subordinate. A violation too blatant for any company to ignore. By the end of the day, the walls would close in on both of them, at work, at home, everywhere they thought they were safe. And the best part? They still had no idea just how much further they had to fall. By the next morning, the whispers had already escaped the walls of Pinnacle Marketing and spread like wildfire. At first, it was subtle, a few LinkedIn murmurs, hushed phone calls between competitors, emails with vague subject lines. Then it broke wide. Senior executive placed on leave pending misconduct investigation. The statement didn't print his name, but anyone in the industry could connect the dots. Ethan Cole, the golden boy of Pinnacle, was suddenly radioactive. I sat at my kitchen table, scrolling through headlines, a cooling cup of coffee at my side. Years of climbing, schmoozing, polishing that perfect reputation, undone in less than 24 hours. I didn't need to add a single word to the fire. The evidence spoke for itself. By mid-afternoon, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Not from reporters, not from HR, but from Laura. "David, what's happening? Please call me, I don't understand. Everyone saw. We can fix this, can't we? Please. I need you." Each message was longer than the last, frantic strings of words, like she believed if she typed fast enough she could undo reality. I let the phone sit on the counter, face down, each vibration proof that the balance had shifted. For weeks, she'd held the upper hand, weaving lies while I stumbled in the dark. Now the roles had reversed. My silence was power. Her panic was fuel. Finally, when the texts turned into a string of calls, I answered. "David?" Her voice cracked immediately, raw and jagged. "Please, listen. Whatever you think you know, whatever people are saying, it doesn't have to be the end. We can work through this. Don't throw everything away." I closed my eyes, listening to the desperation in her tone. Once, those words might have broken me. Once, I would have clung to them, begged to believe. Not now. "You didn't make a mistake, Laura," I said, my voice flat, steady. "You made a choice. And you made it over and over again." Silence on the other end. Just her shallow breathing, ragged and uneven. She tried again, her words tumbling out, drenched in tears. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way. It was a mistake, that's all. I still love you. Please, believe me. A hollow laugh rose in my chest, but I swallowed it. I didn't need volume, I needed clarity. This isn't a mistake, I said. Forgetting an anniversary is a mistake. Misplacing your keys is a mistake. What you did? That's betrayal. You lied. You cheated. And then you asked me to raise another man's child. Her sobs broke through the line, jagged like glass shattering in slow motion. She tried to speak, but no words came, only the sound of her unraveling. For once, it wasn't me choking on the truth. It was her. And I wasn't going to save her from it. By the end of that week, Pinnacle issued the inevitable statement, executive terminated following internal investigation. Ethan's career, the one he had gambled everything on, was gone. Sarah had already filed for separation. I heard she packed his things into boxes and left them stacked by the curb. His kids refused to speak to him, old enough to sense betrayal even if they didn't grasp every detail. I pictured him in some bare apartment, scrolling through headlines that once praised him but now cut him down to size. He thought he'd won. He thought Laura was his prize. In less than a week, he had lost everything. And Laura? Her world was beginning to crack. HR had called her in, too. The evidence was impossible to ignore. Her access was revoked. Her badge deactivated. The career she had sacrificed our marriage for was slipping through her fingers. That night, she called again. Her voice was shaking. They know everything. I don't know what to do. David, please. I'm scared. I listened in silence, staring at the dark ceiling above me. For weeks, she thought she was in control. Now she was fumbling, terrified, stripped of the mask she wore so easily. And I couldn't feel an ounce of pity. It happened late one evening, weeks after the dust had already settled. I had stopped answering Laura's calls by then, stopped reading her frantic messages. Her words had lost their weight. But that night, a new notification lit my phone. It wasn't another paragraph of excuses or apologies. It was a photograph. A baby wrapped in a soft pink blanket. Dark hair, tiny features, eyes squeezed shut as she slept. Beneath the photo were 6 words, "Her name is Lily. Please forgive me." For a long time, I just stared at the screen. That small face should have broken me. Should have stirred something paternal, something hopeful. But all I felt was distance. Because I already knew the truth. Lily wasn't mine. She never would be. Laura thought a baby's picture would tether me back to her, bind me to the story she had tried to rewrite. Maybe she believed the image of innocence could erase the lies, the emails, the receipts, the late-night whispers. But it didn't. If anything, it reminded me of everything she had stolen: trust, loyalty, the chance to be a father in the way I had once dreamed. I set the phone down, the photo still glowing on the screen. My chest didn't ache. My throat didn't tighten. There were no tears. Just clarity. Some bonds are born in love. Others are born in lies. And I refused to carry the weight of hers. I picked up the phone again, looked once more at the photo of the child. She was innocent in all of this, untouched by the wreckage she had been born into. But innocence didn't make her mine. She was Ethan's responsibility, not mine. My thumb hovered over the screen for a moment, steady and deliberate. Then I pressed delete. The image vanished in an instant. No hesitation. No regret. It wasn't just a picture I erased. It was the last thread binding me to Laura. For so long, revenge had been the fuel that kept me upright. Each file I copied, each step I planned, every strike I delivered, it gave me purpose when betrayal had hollowed me out. But as I sat in the quiet, the photo gone, I realized something I hadn't before. I didn't need to keep destroying them. I already had what I wanted. Not their pain. Not their downfall. Those were byproducts. What I truly wanted was my life back, untethered, unchained, free from the weight of their choices pressing on me. Laura was unraveling. Ethan was finished. Their world was ash. And mine was no longer tied to it. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. Freedom isn't loud. It doesn't come with fireworks or grand gestures. It comes in silence, in clarity, in the steady breath of a man who finally walks away. And I was free. In the end, it wasn't the emails, the phone records, or the carefully orchestrated strategy that stayed with me. It wasn't the moment Laura's smile collapsed in that glass conference room, or the headlines that tore Ethan's career apart. Those were victories, yes, but temporary ones. What stayed with me was the clarity. For months, I carried their betrayal like a weight strapped to my chest. I thought revenge would lighten it. And in some ways, it did. Each strike I delivered, legal, family, professional, chipped away at the illusion they had built. I watched them stumble, watched them fall. And for a while, that was enough. But the real victory came when I stopped looking at them altogether. When I walked through my house without feeling the walls pressing in with secrets. When I could sit at my kitchen table, sip my coffee, and not see her phone glowing in the dark or imagine his name flashing across the screen. When I realized their choices no longer had the power to shape mine. Laura and Ethan believed they could build a future on lies. Layering deceit over deceit, like bricks in a wall. But walls built on lies always crack. And when they did, I didn't just expose them, I used their own foundation against them. Every receipt, every text, every whispered promise became the very tools that collapsed their world. But here's the truth I carry now: victory isn't found in watching others burn. That's only smoke and ash, and eventually it blows away. The real victory was reclaiming myself. Walking free from the wreckage, lighter than I'd been in years. I don't hate Laura anymore. Hate takes energy, and she's already taken enough from me. I don't pity Ethan either. His downfall was inevitable the moment he chose to gamble his life on another man's wife. They're both living in the ruins they created. That's punishment enough. What matters now is me. I'm no longer the man who walked into that house with dust on his boots and lavender candles burning in the hallway. That man was blindsided, broken, hollowed out by betrayal. The man who stands here now is different. Sharper. Stronger. Free. Sometimes justice isn't about punishing others, it's about unchaining yourself. And that's what I've done. So if you're reading this, if you've ever felt the weight of betrayal pressing into your ribs, know this: revenge can feel satisfying, but it won't save you. What saves you is letting go. Walking away. Building a life where their lies don't echo anymore. That's where I found peace. Not in their downfall. But in my freedom.